Hey, what's up? Welcome to our series, Wondrously Weird Bible Stories, where we dig into the strange, the supernatural, and the most mysterious parts of the Bible. So buckle up, things are about to get seriously weird. Don't get mad at me, but you might be reading Genesis wrong. For many of us, the creation story and the flood narrative are warm, familiar tales. Adam and Eve in the garden and Noah building his ark. But what if I told you that these stories were far more profound and far more confrontational than we might realize? What if I told you that Genesis wasn't just written to tell us what happened, but to boldly refute the prevailing beliefs of its time, confronting the theological assumptions of the ancient world? Let's start with the bigger picture. Genesis wasn't written in isolation. The world into which it was revealed was already full of competing stories about how the universe began and why humanity existed. For example, the Babylonians had the Enuma Elish, a wildly popular creation myth. In that story, the god Marduk becomes king of the gods by slaughtering a chaos dragon named Tiamat, splitting her corpse in half to create the heavens and the earth. Creation, in their view, was the byproduct of violence, a cosmic accident resulting from the power struggles of deities at war. Genesis, however, opens with a radically different declaration. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Notice that there's no war, no chaos, no bloodshed. Yahweh doesn't need to fight anyone to bring creation into existence. He speaks, and creation obeys. Light appears, order emerges, and life flourishes. Genesis isn't just telling us that God created, it's telling us that Yahweh alone is supreme. But it doesn't stop there. The way Genesis describes creation also makes a profound theological point about humanity's role in the world. In the Enuma Elish and similar myths, humans are an afterthought, created to serve the gods' selfish needs, to feed them, clothe them, and basically do their grunt work. But notice how Genesis flips this narrative on its head. Humans aren't created as slaves to the gods. We are made in the image of God. In Genesis, humanity is given dignity, purpose, and responsibility to steward creation, to rule under God's authority, and to enjoy fellowship with Him. Genesis doesn't just tell us that humans exist, it tells us why we exist, to reflect the character of our Creator. Now let's talk about the flood. Did you know the ancient world was also full of flood stories? The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, tells the story of Utnapishtim, who is warned by the gods to build a boat and survive a flood sent to wipe out humanity. But why did the gods send the flood? Because humans were too noisy, annoying the gods with their constant chatter. Just think about that for a second. In these stories, the gods are petty, easily angered, and detached from humans' desires. Contrast that with Genesis. The flood in the Bible isn't about petty divine annoyance, it's about justice. Genesis 6 verse 5 tells us that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The flood wasn't sent because humans were loud. It was sent because humanity had corrupted God's good creation through violence and sin. And yet, even in judgment, Yahweh shows grace. He doesn't destroy everyone. He spares Noah and his family, not because Noah was perfect, but because he found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis gives us a God who is just, holy, and patient, not fickle or arbitrary like the gods of Babylon. But there's an even deeper layer here. The fact that so many cultures had their own versions of creation and flood stories doesn't discredit the Bible, it actually strengthens it. Think about it. If nearly every ancient culture had some version of a creation story or a flood narrative, doesn't that suggest these events actually happened? The key difference is interpretation. The Babylonians, the Sumerians, and others remembered these divine events, but often attributed them to their pantheons of lesser gods, crafting stories of divine chaos and petty rivalries. Genesis cuts through the noise to reveal the truth. It wasn't Marduk or Tiamat or Enlil. It was Yahweh, the one true God, whose power and purpose stand unrivaled. Okay, but why is this important? It shows us that we need to read Genesis with fresh eyes, not just as a collection of stories, but as a bold theological motif. So next time you read Genesis, don't think of it as a quaint origin story. Think of it as a revolutionary declaration. In the midst of a world filled with distorted myths and counterfeit gods, Genesis proclaims the unmatched authority of Yahweh, the creator and sustainer of all things. It reveals that the universe isn't an accident, humanity isn't a mistake, and Yahweh's power is supreme. Thanks for stopping by. If you enjoyed this, don't miss my series on supernaturality and the Bible. The link is in the description. And just remember to keep reading that Bible.